Lord showed me, and behold, two baskets of figs, which were set before the temple of the Lord. After that, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Now that's during the second captivity of the three. And the princes of Judah, with the carpenters and smiths from Jerusalem, and had brought them to Babylon. Now, what is being signified by these two baskets of figs? The sum of what God by his prophet revealeth in this chapter is that he would deal more graciously with those carried into captivity with Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, than he would with Zedekiah, which was to come and be the third captivity. These baskets are said to be set before the temple of the Lord, not to be sold there, but to be presented to the Lord, in allusion to the baskets of first fruits, which, according to the law, were there brought for that purpose, and signified that the two people represented by them were before the Lord. So these figs are before the Lord. In his sight were known to him and judged by him, just like these taken into captivity. And once again, of the three captivities that we had went over in previous study, of the three captivities, we see the first in 605 with the prophet Daniel and his companions, as well as some of the ornaments of the temple being taken away into Babylon. That was the first captivity. Then the second one, a few years later, Nebuchadnezzar again attacks the city. He captures King Jehoiakim, whom he takes to Babylon. And in the third, it will be he destroys those cities, Zedekiah, and all. It would profit us a little bit to observe what is happening with Nebuchadnezzar, what brings him about to attack the city, what brings him about to do this. So in Jehoiakim's fourth of his 11 years reigning in Jerusalem, Nebuchadnezzar defeated Necho of Egypt at Carchemish, way, way north, and was suddenly called home by the news of the death of Nabopolassar, his father, whom he succeeded on the throne of Babylon in the same year. Now, up until this time, Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar's father, he was the one who really built Babylon up. He would attack the Babylonians and Medes, attack and destroy Nineveh, which was pretty much the largest city in the world at that time. Nineveh was. That was in 612. And then here we see his son Nebuchadnezzar coming up and attacking the Pharaoh at Carchemish. The following year, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon invades Judah, and King Jehoiakim is forced to become a vassal king. Daniel and his companions are at this invasion taken captive to Babylon. After 3 years, in 602 BC, Pharaoh Necho of Egypt retakes Gaza from the Babylonians, and Jehoiakim rebels against his overlord, Nebuchadnezzar. Starts to rely more on Egypt. In December 599 BC, just a few years later after he's rebelled, Babylonian, Aramean, Moabite, and Ammonite forces, all these surrounding Jerusalem, all these forces are deployed against Judah. Jehoiakim is killed and is succeeded by his son Jehoiakim in 598 BC. Later in 598 BC, Nebuchadnezzar besieges Jerusalem again. King Jehoiakim surrenders in March 597 BC. And then we know that because it would have been 3 months. He only reigned a few months. And 10,000 Judeans, including the prophet Ezekiel, are taken captive to Babylonia. Nebuchadnezzar strips the temple of all the gold articles made by King Solomon. Jehoiakim is taken to Babylon, and Zedekiah is installed in his place as a Muppet king for 11 years. So here's Zedekiah, the beginning of him, after Ezekiel and them are taken. 8 years later, the time of Zedekiah's rule, 8 years later, in 589, Zedekiah rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar in Jerusalem, was besieged again for over a year and a half, almost 2 years, before finally falling in 587 BC. The temple was destroyed then, instead of being stripped as it had been in previous attacks. Now it's destroyed, Solomon's temple, and the population was taken into exile at Babylonia, only leaving a very, very few in order to just remain within the desolated places of Judea. So now that we have that brief whole history of these captivities, now we can see about these two figs. It was at the time of the second captivity that we're being seen about the good figs, and it's at the final captivity where All of it will be bad. Because Coniah, Jehoiakim's son, Coniah, the king that preceded Zedekiah, Coniah, he outlives all of them, and he's actually treated very well in Babylon. So it's those in which went in that one, especially Ezekiel and all of them, and as well as Daniel in the first captivity, they're all treated much, much better than those in which they rebelled up until the very, very end. One basket, continuing in Jeremiah 24, one basket had very good figs, even like the figs that are first ripe, and the other basket had very naughty figs, which could not be eaten. They were so bad. Then said the Lord unto me, What seest thou, Jeremiah? And I said, Figs, the good figs, very good, and the evil, very evil, that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. Again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, Like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive of Judah, whom I have sent out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans for their good. Now, to most of us, that seems very strange. You're going to send me into captivity under pagan rule in order for my good? Well, it goes right back to whenever the ground is cursed for Adam's sake. It's a good thing now that you'll be humbled in such a way. There are many indications that under the teaching of Daniel and his companions and of Ezekiel, they were improving morally under their discipline of suffering. Their very contact with the monstrous idolatry of Babylon made them more conscious than they had ever been before at the greatness of their own faith, the process which, at the end of the 70 years of exile, made them once more and forever a purely monotheistic people had already begun. It's kind of like whenever I went to jail for just a few days in 2005. It didn't make me hate God. It actually made me wanted to do right. So persecution, tribulation, most times it's a very good thing. It's much like disciplining a child. God chastens those in whom he loves. For I will set mine eyes upon them for good, and I will bring them again to this land, and I will build them and not pull them down, and I will plant them and not pluck them up, and I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart. And as for the evil figs, which cannot be eaten, they are so evil, surely thus saith the Lord. So will I give Zedekiah the king of Judah and his princes and the residue of Jerusalem that remain in this land, and them that dwell in the land of Egypt. And I will deliver them to be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt, to be a reproach and a proverb, and a taunt and a curse in all the places where I shall drive them. And I will send the sword, the famine, and the pestilence among them, till they be consumed from off the land that I gave unto them and to their fathers. Now, for one last comment on this, we cannot determine as to God's love or hatred by what is before us. By our outward observations, we can't determine whether God is for us or against us. Most people living in a mansion are probably hell-bound today. How hard is it for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven? And then if you find yourself in very troublesome times, you may be right in the will of God, like Paul the Apostle and Jeremiah and all these others. So we don't know. We only know that we have to stay in fellowship with God. We have to love God and think on God. Early suffering sometimes proves for the best. The sooner the child is corrected, the better effect the correction is likely to have. Even this captivity was for their good, and God's intentions never are in vain. So my friends, we are to be like these good figs before the Lord, those in which he can use, and those in which, if he decides to correct us, it is because he loves us. It is. You parents can testify to that about your own children. This is for your own good. I can't tell you how many times I heard that as a child. This doesn't seem like it's for any good, but it was. Later on, I learned. But this is the way of the Lord, and we will rejoice over it. Thank you all for joining me, my dear friends. Lord willing, we're going to be getting into Jeremiah 25 very soon. God of peace, love, and mercy be with you all. Amen.